Welcome to the Primal Show with Gary Collins, who's in the red shirt, and myself, Heath Squier, just for clarification. And today's guest, Dr. Mark Smith from docsmith.org. We're very pleased to have him on. He has had the privilege of being trained by the founder of the Paleo Diet, Loren Cordain, and he is helping so many patients with basically going paleo. And we wanted to talk to him a little bit today about transitional foods and the importance of them. And we'll ask you, Dr. Smith, how important is it to have transitional foods when you're going from a mainstream diet to a paleo diet?
Well, it's a great question, and I think the best way to answer that is to talk about a protocol that a colleague of mine and I have used now and we've actually published this. We've got clinical data published on this too. Dr. Oscar Kurtzier, he's probably one of the best clinical nutritionists I know. And I was actually lecturing on high-intensity interval training and a little bit about Paleolithic nutrition, where he was just an audience member. And he came up to me afterwards. He's a South African guy, and a lot of what I was speaking made sense. And he was very much in favor of paleo, but was really concerned about the journey to get people from the typical Western diet over to paleo. And he had developed a protocol. And so you talk about transition. His first thing to do was just to reduce the carbohydrate load or the glycemic load. So, that's the first thing we do with clients. And the number of times I've made the mistake when people go, no, I've got great discipline and I'm just going to go straight to paleo. And a lot of times they fail. I'm not saying that can't be done, but long-term compliance, we do much better when we just, switch out a baked potato with sweet potatoes. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to keep those in there in a large quantity down the road, but early on, that's an easy transition. So
Sure.
That would be one example. Now, we eventually try to get to an 80-15-5 approach to paleo. 80% paleo foods, 15% what I would call non-paleo but not processed. So that might be some grains, it could be some dairy, it could be some legumes. And then the 5% is kind of crap, right? Beer, pizza, chips, all the sort of very highly processed foods. And I don't think that in small quantity is going to hurt you. Now, and obviously we're going to be talking about your products from Julian Bakery, but when I first sort of saw those, the attraction to me was, I think the bread was the first thing that perhaps you came out with, and I suddenly saw it on the internet. I'm like, oh, wow. Because one of the things I used to tell all my clients about, now, if you don't have the discipline, you feel that you're being robbed from having bread, you can make paleo bread. Yeah. Do you know how many people did it? Zero. No one did it. It's too much work, too much effort. Same with me. I didn't ever do it. I gave them the recipes on how to do it, but to me, that's more effort than just not eating the bread.
Sure.
So it's been a huge thing now. I say, look, if you feel that you like the consistency, you want a sandwich, you want some bread, now we can give them very low carb. The glycemic load on that is pretty much zero, I think, right?
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Now we're not going, it's not like the baked potato for a sweet potato, which is a 95 to a 55 glycemic index change. Now we're going from potentially, 70, 75 down to virtually zero. We wouldn't want to do that. That's what we're trying to do in month one. So yes, fantastic for transition, but they're also fantastic now for just putting in that, if we want to just combine the 15 and 5 and make it a 20%, technically people would go, well, they're not paleo. People wouldn't have eaten paleo bread back in the day. No, okay, we get that. But now it's in that 20%, but it's sort of really in the 80 now. So
Right.
People can actually enjoy foods that they feel they had to give up and really stay within the paleo template. And to me, that's massive. And I've seen that difference. There's no question that it's easier and we're getting the results.
Well, and it's important, and it's so great that you point out that it's really about the ingredients at the end of the day and what those ingredients, or how those ingredients respond within the body. And I've said this many times that we're one of the only companies that actually lab test and verify with the most reputable lab testing companies, Medallion Labs. We actually post our results online for complete transparency. So,
I've seen that, yeah.
And one of, we recently had become under attack because the FDA wrote us a letter about paleo bread and about a word being high protein on a web page. And we had to switch that word high protein out to 7 grams of protein. So everybody in the paleo industry was like, oh, paleo bread's mislabeled, but it was really about an error on the Paleo Bread webpage. And we simply changed it to 7 grams of protein, but everybody was so looking to criticize and point the finger that, oh, Julian Bakery has a problem now, you know, when it was really about high protein. It didn't have anything to do with the nutritional information stated on the actual label. And it's like everybody's so quick to judge, but what we're trying to do is simply improve people's health. We're trying to make it easy for people to stay on track. And yet all these people that have, you know, books and recipes are trying to attack us when there's really nothing to attack, because we have lab verified results that show our bread is actually low carb. And when you're talking about a bread made from egg whites, which is 0 net carbs, and coconut, which almost has no carbs, and psyllium fiber, which is 0 net carbs, really there's nothing to complain about. You have a 7 gram of protein per slice in the almond bread with 1 net carb and 60 calories. Our bread's being eaten by, we had Jason Poston on a few episodes ago. He's going to be in Mr. Olympia next week. I'm so proud of him because he's a diabetic that uses our paleo bread every day, and he's using it to, guess what, get cut for the show. And he's getting amazing results. And I'm sure you've had clients of yours come to you and say, you know what, paleo's not working. And when you really inspect their diet, it's probably because they're consuming too high of carbs from even paleo ingredients like sugar, maple syrup, and some of these higher carb, and they're wrecking their blood sugar, so they're not getting that sustained energy throughout the day. I mean, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the paleo confusion, I call it, from some of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, well, my clients aren't confused.
Well, yes, of course.
Confused, but then they quickly get unconfused. I mean,
well, that initial confusion, though, when they come to you.
Yeah, look, it's a simple template, and it's amazing now how there is confusion, or there's this huge whole world, and some of that sort of developed as I was sort of perhaps not even aware of how big it was getting. You know, you're busy doing other things, and it was already working for me. It was almost like finish QED. Like, why are we still discussing this type of approach where I'm coming from? But now there's an importance to, I think my re-entrance into it is when I started seeing the criticism of paleo in general, you know, so people can go and look at that rebuttal of the Christina Warrener that she did that TED lecture. Well, I mean, that got me so fuming, you know, I went through minutia, you know, I hate it when people, you know, misrepresent things. So that's when I suddenly became so aware of, wow, you know, she's out there now, she should have known better. You don't go as someone with a PhD from Harvard and just start picking and choosing off blogs and websites when you know full well there's a strong body of scientific published data on the, you know, that's where she should go after. But, you know, go read my rebuttal on her at offthemark.org because you'll learn a lot from the sort of cloudiness that people come up with to criticize the paleo diet. So, yes, now we then got people calling themselves experts and putting stuff out there. Well, look, the very simple template for paleo is lean animal protein, okay? And what I mean by that, it's not going to have more than 50% fat. So fat is fine. Yeah, fat is great. We'll get into that. Fat is a good thing. But can you have too much of it? Yes. And we just simply need to go, what does nature provide? Find me an animal that has greater than 50% protein, 50% fat, you know, and we'll get you a Nobel Prize. Doesn't exist, all right? Some of the fish will get close to that. But unless mankind has sort of processed this, it's not going to be there. Yeah, you could go with a chicken thigh leg or a turkey thigh leg. That will get a little higher. But you look at the animal as a whole, the average is always going to be 50% or greater from a protein perspective, and therefore less than 50% fat. So that's what I mean by lean animal protein. And hopefully you know where it's come from. That's why I always say to my clients, if you don't know what that's come from, you need to do a little bit more research. So if it's ground meat, could be okay, but you've got to do a little bit of research. Whereas you can see it's a chicken leg, you can see it's a turkey breast, etc., etc. We're in the right direction. Then we're looking at fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, and beans. I nearly said beans there.
Oh my
nuts
gosh.
and seeds. I was listening to you earlier about the bean thing, which we'll get to. So nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, and lean protein. And the greatest thing about that is try and formulate any diet using those ingredients and then try and criticize the diet. You can't. All right, so that's all I have to do with your products, Heath, I don't study the carb load, and I just look at ingredients, because then I don't have to do all those calculations. That's what I do with any product. I simply look, I see an artificial sweetener in it, it's gone. I see high fructose corn syrup, that's not nature, it's gone. For the most part, if it had some milk, it's pretty much gone, but if it's a whole milk, maybe it fits in that 20%. But if it's going to get the paleo label, lean protein, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, that's it. Otherwise, it's not paleo. Then we have to start doing a little bit more research on it.
Wait, now you talked a little bit about having like a low glycemic load. Gary and I have both talked a little bit about, we think a recommended amount of maybe sugar or so call it like net carbs, where you have fiber deducted from the total carbohydrates. A good load would be like 10 net carbs or 10 grams of sugar or less to kind of keep within a good blood sugar range. Would you agree with something like that?
Yeah, that sounds good. We do it slightly differently. We actually still use a glycemic index model. Okay. Which, that can be criticized, because obviously things like fruits will have a high glycemic index, whereas I have no problem people eating fruits, and that's, and by the way, there's just a study come out that daily fruit consumption reduces overall risk of death by 36% and heart disease by 40%, and yet there are still people out there thinking there's too much sugar. It's like, okay, the sugar in fruit is high glycemic, but you eat the whole fruit, the fiber and water content overrides that. So it's not an issue with that, and we get that. So we've formulated a kind of a glycemic load mix, and we do limit, obviously with the glycemic index, there's no limit to the food. So we've basically taken the concept, and we've got charts and charts, and basically we have a system whereby people can't, it's almost a point system, and they can't go over it. So we've actually taken, so what we do is a little different version. So it does limit. So if because obviously glycemic index doesn't have a quantity associated with it. It's just sort of a label. This is high, this is low. We actually put a quantity measure to it, and we give them 100 points. And so they actually start to learn that you can have some high glycemic foods, but you better keep the quantity very low in that case. Yeah. So, because obviously we are trying to transition them, as we were talking earlier. So going back to your initial question, do I think that's about right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, the metabolic syndrome that we've got going on, it's definitely due to hyperinsulinemia. I mean, and that's too much sugar in the diet. So, yeah, I'm going to be a fan of keeping that low.
Well, and it's the sugar addiction, and I think that's where people miss out on a lot of the information is that, and we talked about this in a previous interview with another doctor about, we're hardwired to go after sweet things because it's not that common to find in nature. It's very hard to find. I mean, I now have 20 acres out in the middle of nowhere, and I would be hard-pressed to find a sweet fruit item on that 20 acres alone, let alone in my neighborhood. I mean, I've gone around, and I have found actually some natural raspberries, and they have these things called huckleberries that are big out there. But otherwise, it is incredibly tough. That's why we're hardwired for it. But now we're surrounded with it all the time, that people don't get that the human body was never geared to consume that much carbohydrate and that much sugar load continuously. And that the organs aren't made to take that kind of punishment and that type of oxidation on a regular basis. And I think that's the message that gets lost too.
Well, I think when you follow that template, lean protein, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, you're not going to fill yourself up on fruit. I mean,
exactly.
It just, and you look at the studies of too much fructose, you're looking at about 200 milligrams of fructose. That's eating 16 apples. Who's going to eat 16 apples? So just again, in common sense moderation, you got to get the calories. You're not going to get it. We're not a cow. We don't have a foregut. So we're designed to eat that template. And when you just give someone that template, the quantity will naturally be taken care of. People will satiate themselves normally, and the quantities will just take care of themselves. Same with your products from Julian Bakery. They're going to be taken care of normally because what they're made of will satiate people, so they're not going to eat a whole loaf of bread in one sitting, because I wouldn't recommend someone doing that. It's the same thing. We don't want someone eating 50 ounces of nuts in one sitting. I mean, but it naturally takes care of itself. So it fits in from an ingredient perspective. So I want to go back to the the high protein thing you talked about, and I just find it amusing that the FDA were on your case with that.
Yeah.
A great comeback would have been like, it's funny you should say that, because lumped in with animal protein as a good source of protein by the recommendation is what? Beans. They've got about 40% of the protein, and when you look at the actual bioavailability of the protein, they're down to about 20%. They're not allowed to label those high protein, right? So there's probably a lot less than your 7 grams of protein, I think.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, I'm the guy who worked for the FDA, and, you know, when this all happened and the people coming after Heath, and they completely ignored me. I don't know if they realized I worked for the FDA, but I don't know anymore the way they responded. But we also know that this letter and the targeting has been initiated by some of these people by continually writing the FDA letters complaining that his products are mislabeled. And I know
say, what are the, tell me from a perspective of me, all I saw these products, I look at the ingredients, I'm like, wow, these look fantastic. I bring some in, I taste them, I try them with my clients, I'm like, these are fantastic, these are great. So what's the gripe? What is
the gripe was they were using the letter to try to smear our company. And the FDA wrote it up in such a way it looked like a horrible atrocity had occurred. And really all it was that they wanted us to change the word high protein on the paleo bread page. They were nitpicking.
Okay, so is that it? Is that the only thing?
That's it for the paleo bread. And then we make a bread that's not paleo. It's called net carb zero bread. There was 1 gram of sugar in it. Yeah. And we had a label run come through that showed 1 gram of sugar on the label, but it actually contained 0 when it was lab tested. So there was a variance there, but it was within range. There was also, the FDA actually didn't know their own guidelines for insoluble fiber, and insoluble fiber counts as 0. So we specifically...
Okay, so do any of these people actually have, apart from the labeling and this, do they have a criticism with your products?
Well, some people just don't like it.
That's fine. Again, fine.
They don't use it.
What is the argument against the nutritional content of your products? Is there any argument there? Because if there isn't, I can just tell your audience, stop listening to that then. Right for yourself, I can assure you I would not be supporting the products if they didn't fit the paleo template.
Yeah, I would eat them for the love of God. I mean, I eat them myself. And that's the problem I was trying to explain. I didn't get a chance to explain to them, but it's the squeaky wheel in the FDA. If someone writes the FDA, especially to the director, enough letters to their office, eventually, no matter what you're doing, they're going to do something to make that squeaky wheel go away.
That will eventually go away.
I mean,
you've become very successful. Expect some people to try and bring you down. I'm sure you get.
Exactly.
We have competitors. We do. We have people trying to smear us. We also take away from the paleo authors and paleo bloggers because instead of following their recipes, we're giving them products that are available on the shelf. So we actually are in direct competition now.
Okay. Okay. Make recipes with your products.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Clients, the paleo wraps. Okay, I've got a high-end client, very wealthy guy. He put on too much weight. He had a death in his family, and he basically was like, "Can you help me?" So we sit down. I bring up paleo. He goes, "I did paleo once." He goes, "Yeah, I did. How did you do with it?" "I did really well." Okay, great. He doesn't like to cook, etc., etc. So we went through all of the guidelines, eating out in a restaurant. He's like, "Yep, can do that, can do that, can do that." Okay, let's look at breakfast when you're not necessarily going to a restaurant. He basically didn't even shop. So basically what it came down to after I'm digging a little deeper, I'm like, "Do you need me to shop for you? Do you need me to cook for you?" He's like, "That would be great." So what we do, I make him literally 24 wraps a week, an egg wrap with some onions, pepper. So basically paleo veggie ingredients with egg and a mixture now of the plain or the turmeric wrap, and then a free-range chicken or steak. Same thing with ingredients, avocado in there. And I've got so many people now addicted to these things. I mean, I could see it becoming a business. So there's a recipe. I don't want to go in and make the wrap. Do these people want to make the wrap? Just do your recipes using your ingredients.
Right. Yeah.
So you're not,
they don't
hold hands together. We're trying to help people, you know?
That's what, that was my thing is like, if you have a
market your wrap though, that's the problem. Yeah. They can't fit it into their affiliate to make money off it somehow, that they got to hate it. I think that's where it comes
But these
from.
people could have contacted me if they had a question about us. I mean, we're all on the same team. That's the thing that really pisses me off. It's like we're all here preaching paleo, helping people get away from this mainstream horrible diet, and we're all trying to help people, you know, obtain optimal health. And they're out there trying to smear me and my company. And for what reason? Because they can't make money off of me, or because so and so said that, you know, they don't like our product. But we're all here working together, and it's just sad that people can't write a simple email for a clarification on this, you know, letter. I mean, we have made over 600 recipes, and we posted on our blog about using our products with real food. And it's a very simple equation. And just because my products happen to be low carb and low sugar, and they're definitely geared for people that want to get optimal results and in a fast way, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're preaching low carb, low sugar. That's horrible. You're taking away our sugar. Oh no. I mean, what I'm trying to do is fast track people to, if they want to lose weight, that's great. If they want to control their autoimmune issues, that's also great. It's not about weight. It's about providing products that don't destroy blood sugar. Because
it's going to be, you're going to be in a similar position, I think, to just the paleo movement, right? Paleo movement starts to get popular, then all of a sudden you've got people wanting to put it down because they're going to gain some popularity, all right? Yeah. Of course people want to knock your products. I mean, what you got, 160, 200,000 people on Facebook following you? Yeah. So if they, you know, they use your name and critique, they're going to get some publicity. So, you know, that's all that's going on. Same now, we're still getting the paleo people, you know, the anti-paleo people trying to do it. And it'll work until eventually they'll be laughed at if they keep doing it, because it works. When something works, it takes off. And that's what you saw with the paleo. Obviously, when Rob had gone after me to Loren, and he then became the nutritional guru for CrossFit, and CrossFit then took off, that then became the adopted sort of way to eat. You just had more people trying this method of eating, so more people were successful. So, you know, when someone's already done this themselves, they're going to be less inclined to read some, you know, nuance, or Christina Warner trying to say that we did eat legumes. I mean, that's how stupid it is. She was like, we did eat legumes, look at this, and started talking in this long diatribe of the science behind showing that some grains and legumes were consumed in this particular part of the world at this point in time. And you know the time she was talking about? It was post-paleo.
Oh, man.
And we were like, yeah, we've all agreed that there started to become an increase in these foods eventually, and it's got more and more and more and more today, and that's what we're saying can be a bit of a problem. Well, go read that. I ripped that one apart.
Gary and I have talked about that numerous times. It's like, why are they trying to put these foods that are, you know, like beans and minimal, you know, sprouted grains back into this diet when they don't need to be there? We have so many other great foods we can eat. Why? And it's so difficult to prepare them a certain way, and so that they don't cause this or that problem, and they're easier to digest. But just eliminate them. They don't need to be there.
I mean, you look at. It's like anything. So you look at peas, you look at snap peas or mange tout, or you look at green beans. They're not as bad as the pinto beans, everything else, because they're less acidic. But they still have the lectin content, right? So I would look at that. Are they going to kill you today, tomorrow? So unless you really love them, how about have some asparagus? How about some broccoli? How about some cauliflower? There are just simply better alternatives to having those legumes. But yeah, in small quantities, probably not going to be a problem. But in high quantities, or if you have an autoimmune disease, I had a lady who had multiple sclerosis who we ascertained that legumes were the big, you know, whatever protein segment that was kicking her immune system off. We found it to be very congruent with legumes. And I made a big mistake in a meeting with her one time where green beans came up, and she loved green beans. And I went kind of on that sort of thought process. That's more the plant part, you know, and I was like, no, I think you're okay. Green beans will be fine. Wrong. Big wrong. I mean, she had a huge attack of the sort of symptoms that she would get whenever she would consume the beans or anything else. And we had ascertained that she had we got some with MS trying to regenerate the myelin sheath. We got to get some DHA, high quantity DHA supplementation. And the company, this is at a time before I was getting into anything like that. If ever I'll have done the research. I said, you know, go to the local health food store, and she took some DHA pills, and they had darken the gelatin instead of using a herbal extract. They said it was a herbal extract, but it was carob. Carob is a bean extract. I think she took 2 pills and had a huge attack.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, an autoimmune response is much, for some people, is going to be much like an allergy. It doesn't need much to come in to trigger the immune system. So in those circumstances, she then went and ate green beans after me saying it'll be okay, same response. You know, so we're like, oops, sorry, take that out. So when people clean their diet up, they can then reintroduce things and see if it's more of a problem. But it kind of goes back to that same thing. Why even introduce it when there are other things that are better?
I agree, yeah. And with the beans thing, and what me and Heath, I think you agree, we've talked about this before, is they're reintroducing these foods, these starchy carbs that are inflammatory, and they're the foods that were causing a lot of the conditions to begin with, and now they're fighting to bring them back in the paleo diet.
Yeah.
And I'm all, what are you doing? You know, these
that's
that we fought so hard.
The only way you bring them in is if you're in the 15-5%, you know, but and certain people will handle them better than others, but you can't put them in the paleo template. I mean, because as soon as you do that, before you know it, your overall diet isn't going to look like an 80-20. It's going to look like a 50-50.
Yep.
That's probably not going to get the results that you desire.
Yeah, were you a bit surprised? I don't know if you saw Chris Kresser on the Dr. Oz show with a big plate of beans on there. Were you very disappointed when you saw that air and him recommending legumes on a paleo diet? I mean, were you pretty much shocked?
Yeah, I mean, anytime if it's not the lean protein, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, that's the paleo template. So anything else outside of that should not be used synonymously with paleo. Right. You can say, hey, if you stick to this 80% of the time and you like these foods and want to reintroduce them, you could very well do fine with that, you know. But don't put it on the template, because then people are they'll make that assumption, hey, it's on the paleo template, it's unlimited, right? That's the thing. The template of lean protein, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, pretty much unlimited. You know, we would, if people are trying to lose weight, we limit the nut consumption or dried fruit consumption, things like that. But if they're not trying to lose weight, even there, I don't have too much of an issue. When someone's metabolism is really high, they can handle that higher fat content.
Well,
but,
I think
there's a limit to it, obviously.
Well, just think, if me and Heath, right now, if we decided to eat beans 3 times a week, my physique would change drastically. I'll guarantee it.
3 times a week, no. Yeah.
That's what he was saying. You can eat beans 3 times a week, and what was it, dairy a couple times a day?
Yeah.
Really?
And I completely changed.
Yeah, I saw some of the pieces out. I know Loren wrote a rebuttal on that, saying, you know, wanted to clarify and really got after the legume component and dairy too. It's like, you know, it's particularly if you start to look at the autoimmune patient. Well, you know, they can have negative ramifications from just a morsel of it. So you start introducing a large quantity like that, and it's disappointing that someone clouds the content and the information. Obviously, if Dr. Oz has someone on and they're an expert, they've got a big following, the general public is going to assume they know what they're talking about, and that now becomes, oh no, legumes are paleo. So it clouds the waters terribly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're on Dr. Oz if you're necessarily an expert. I don't know. I think that's reaching sometimes.
They should be.
They should be.
If I said he was an expert, I'll take that back. I said the audience would assume they're an expert.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I didn't say that, that's what I want to say now.
Yeah.
That's what most people think. If you're on Dr. Oz, you're going to be an expert.
Yeah. We don't mean you. We love Dr.
Hey, I'm not the expert. I'm very good at recognizing experts.
I think the goal of what Gary and I are preaching is that, hey, look, sure, we recognize that paleo can be used for an autoimmune protocol, and the food and the diet goes very well for people that have autoimmune diseases. But if you're looking to lose weight and you're looking to get like lean, cut, and defined, you have to really follow a low carb, low sugar approach and follow the paleo template. And what my company's done is said, hey, look, here's all these great ingredients which are paleo. Let's fuse them together to keep people on track so they don't stall or they don't gain weight, and you mix them with real food and you're going to get great results. I mean, I posted my pictures. I'm so happy. The foods that I develop are ones that I actually personally eat. They're not just to make money on.
Going back to the client I make the actual wraps for, that was because he drives to LA, from Palm Springs to LA a hell of a lot. And that's where he said, that's my downfall. You know, I'm on the road, I haven't prepped stuff, I'm stopping and grabbing, you know, high carb, you know, crap processed foods. So he starts off, he'll have a wrap, an egg wrap in the morning and his lunch. Even when he's not traveling now, that's become kind of his go-to thing. And, you know, he lost 20 pounds very quickly, down to a pretty svelte looking guy now. And that's maintained. He does a nice paleo meal at a restaurant in the evenings. And he's maintained it. And it's easy to do, you know. But if I had now got a grain wrap in place of the paleo wrap made of coconut, we wouldn't see that result. It would be totally different. Yeah. And that's just on the weight loss. And I know people like to focus on that, but there's so many other factors, you know, the inflammatory effect of what's happening inside of your body. Right. You know, coconut is such a healthy food. I mean, the palmitic acid in that, the antimicrobial benefits of it alone are fantastic. You know, so it's more than just the weight loss. And I really want to emphasize that to people. It's about feeling really good as well. And you'll feel good when you lose the weight, obviously, but
it's such an anti-inflammatory diet. If you start thinking about it, you're not inflaming your gut all of a sudden. So your whole body starts having less inflammation. Guess what? Your puffiness goes away. You don't have that layer of like I call it extra water. Your body just leans out naturally. It's a natural progression. And sometimes you play around with the macros in order to get wherever it is that you want to go. But it's not really about weight loss. It's about optimal health at the end of the day. And if your macros are wrong and you're consuming an overabundance of carbs and sugar, even if it's paleo, you're still setting yourself up to stall or even gain weight. So it's important to have the proper ratios. I mean, wouldn't you guys agree?
Well, yeah, the easiest thing to tell, we've talked about this, is anyone who's over ingesting carbs in general or sugar, it's the puffiness. It's the first thing you see. They look soft, you know, and we've gone through this a little bit, but that's the first indicator when I look at someone who comes to me and they're puffy and they're retaining water. I go, I can tell you're ingesting too much sugar and too much carbs. I can guarantee it. Yeah. And it's pretty easy to see for someone who deals with it. I mean, for me, I know when I ingest too many carbs, I know what happens to me. It only takes 2 or 3 days, and I can instantly see the puffiness come back with water.
Let's clarify carbs too, right? None of your products, Heath, replace natural carbs. All of your products are replacing the unnatural carbs, all right? Natural carbohydrates are fruits and vegetables. You're not competing with fruits and vegetables, okay? You're competing with grains, legumes, and dairy sort of products. You could look at it that way, right? So, and you're doing it with paleo ingredients. That's all you're doing. I say all you're doing. I think you've done a fantastic job of it, and it's not that easy to do. That's why it's become so easy for people to do the transition or to do a much better 20% when we talk about that 80-20. But you had mentioned a point about, you know, the gut health. And I think one of the things that is a trigger to ill health or chronic disease is when that gut, the epithelial layer of the gut, starts to break down. Now, there's a number of things that can cause that. But one of those things is a constant barrage of lectins, which you're going to find in the legumes, you're going to find in the grains. And also what you've got to consider with dairy is the epidermal growth factor that's found in milk is there for a reason. It's for the calf to grow. We have a small amount of epidermal growth factor in our saliva, and it binds the epidermal growth factor receptor in our gut to help repair it and keep it healthy. But if you start consuming, lectins can bind that receptor, as will any milk, which has, you know, about 4,000 to 5,000 times the quantity our saliva has. So it upregulates the receptor. Bottom line is you start to get more lectins into the body, which can cause inflammatory havoc, but also it can start to cause havoc with the gut lining itself. So then you can start developing allergies to other foods. When I see people that they've got issues with paleo foods, you know, they might have an allergy to shellfish, I typically see that as more of a leaky gut sensitivity as opposed to necessarily a receptor-bound issue. So yes, I think people might be okay for a few years, could be 10 years, could be 20 years. But, you know, how long do you want to live for and live a healthy life without having, you know, developed Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, or some of these other things down the road? Or if not that, just simply the leaky gut being the cause of some other chronic disease. So that's, you know, you might feel okay today. You might not see a short-term problem with it, but there's plenty of evidence now to show that this is not a good choice to do on a regular basis.
Well, and most Americans suffer from it. I mean, most Americans suffer from digestive issues. I mean, we all did. I know I did prior to, you know, converting over my diet. I didn't know what they were at the time. I thought that was normal. But yeah, I mean, I just don't understand why people want to battle for items that are going to cause distress and health problems. And I don't understand it. And I've always said, why were you fighting so hard for a bean anyway? It's just mushy, tasteless, you know, that's all it is. I mean, why fight so hard for something that really isn't that tasty to begin with? I'd rather go out and have, you know, some free-range chicken.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a classic. There's a Mexican restaurant in town, and people go to Mexican. Well, you can get free-range chicken. You can get, you know, good, healthy, lean protein. What does it come with? Rice and beans. I just tell them, I don't want the rice and beans. Can you do me some sauteed mixed vegetables? So the other irony of it is it costs them more money to do that. They're happy to do it, but, you know, no, I want that cheaper shit on my plate, please.
Please, you know, more of that. Give me the cheap stuff that's going to kill me.
Yeah, and I think you've got to look at the sort of the load of bad foods. Like, and it's about making choices all the time, I tell people. Like, if I go to a Mexican restaurant, there's some chips and salsa. Now, I know that that's a ton of carbohydrates, there's lectins. I like chips and salsa. I'm going to have some. But if there were a better choice there, I'm waiting for you to come out with the chips.
Yes.
Be crunchy like that.
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. You're getting close, because those coconut flakes, you got to get close to that chip. I will bow at your feet if you all right?
Soon.
I'll have some. But then if I make another bad choice, it's a bad choice. I get that, right? But then I go with my main meal, you've already had your bad stuff, right? There's a limit to how much my body can handle. I now go rice and beans as well. Now we're just piling it on, and there will come a point where the straw will break that camel's back. So I think you can, when I tell people, just keep looking at that template, and you make those choices, like I just said, replace the beans and rice for the mixed vegetables, it adds up. Replace the wheat whole wrap, the whole wheat wrap, like that's better than the, you almost could argue, I remember there's a few guys I've talked to out there, they could argue that the refined white wrap is better than the whole wheat wrap because there's probably a lower lectin content in it. But I'm sort of being facetious a little bit. But you replace that now with a coconut wrap, a paleo wrap, and you keep doing that, that's going to add up for the better in a big way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, typically for me, I'll go grab some chicken, some guacamole, and some salsa, and there's dinner. I mean, how easy is that? You know, it's really simplified, and that's, I think, what we're all about is simplifying this way of eating and avoiding the confusion. I mean, even when it comes down to, you know, peanuts are a legume. A lot of people don't know that, so that's another area of confusion. But that can be replaced with, you know, limited amounts of almond butter. Now there's sunflower seed butter, which is amazing. And it
tastes like peanut butter.
Yeah,
that's the best one to use if you've already got kids that like, you know, peanut butter. Give them sun nut butter because that tastes so much like the peanut butter. But I mean, what's the biggest allergy for kids? Peanuts. You know, like and yet it's still out there. But the culture of, you know, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you know, you look at the commercials and the love that's surrounded with it. I mean, the marketing around this stuff, you know, it does a good job to get people, you know. They don't know that it's a legume, and because they probably knew that way back. They're pretty smart to call it a nut, pea nuts, pea legumes.
Oh yeah, someone came up with that. But let's be honest,
it have the same ring to it, does it? Pea legumes.
A peanut butter and jelly sandwich is basically a donut in disguise. I mean, when you think of the nutritional content, it has a little more protein in it, but there's not much of a difference.
So it should be called a pea bean, shouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Bean.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Well, let's start a movement. We'll start
the
clarification of what it is. But no, yeah, so it's amusing to me when I do see the arguments against it. You can, as I've said again, you can take the lean animal protein, fruits, vegetables, or let's do it the other way, vegetables first, some fruits, nuts and seeds. Try and formulate a bad meal from that. It can't be done. If you want to, that's what you should be doing if you're an anti-paleo person. Do that. And then go and look in the published research and show us why this is so bad for us. Yeah. All right, and then come into your products. You know, I don't know why they're criticizing. I mean, if you go to the bloggers, they feel they're losing out. I would think they would embrace it and just start including your products in the recipes. And hey, if people want to make their own bread, show them how to, those people can show them how to do it as well. It's probably not going to affect your business very much. So once in a while, they might want to try and make their own, and they can see if they prefer it to yours. I doubt if you'd notice a difference in your business.
Well, we're just trying to shed light on the fact that a lot of the authors and bloggers are stalling or creating weight gain by recommending too much sugar or too many carbs in their books and in their recipes, and that, you know, just because you go paleo doesn't mean the rules of blood sugar and sugar and carbs go out the window.
Well, hang on. They're not going paleo, though. They've got too much sugar in there. It's not paleo, right?
Well, I think, you know, sugar from the sense where, you know, they're recommending an overabundance of maple syrup, like maple syrup, honey, and things like this. It still damages blood sugar, and it's not going to give you that sustained energy throughout the day.
I totally agree, but I guess that this is what I've got to realize. Within that paleo template, there's obviously a little bit more knowledge than just saying that. But when you read and you look at, you know, what sort of consumption would hunter-gatherers have had from maple syrup and honey? I mean, it would have been a minuscule amount.
Minuscule.
It's not available. So I totally agree with you.
And that's why they
never have maple syrup and honey on my template.
Right.
So if we keep coming back to that template, there isn't high sugar. So if their recipes have high sugar, it's not a paleo template. Yes, you can make the argument that maple syrup is paleo in as much that they may have had access to it in a minuscule amount. So therefore it's paleo. But if you do that, you've then got to also put a label on it, but in this quantity.
Yes.
All right? Well, they're clearly breaking that rule, and they're just saying, hey, it could have potentially been consumed in the Paleolithic times, therefore we'll use 50 times the amount that would do, because it'll make my recipe taste better or get their sugar high fix.
Well, have you ever seen, they've done specials on indigenous cultures who, when they find honey, it's a treat, and they go bonkers. I mean, literally lose their mind, and they will gorge themselves silly and get stung and, you know, the whole bit, because they know it is that rare of a treat.
Yeah.
I mean, it is that rare.
Well, yeah, that's all I'm saying is their recipes therefore are not paleo. Not in my world.
Yeah,
no, not when you're eating it every day.
And that's the issue, is like almost every single book that's like the #1 best-selling books, they all have these recipes that are just flooded with an overabundance of sugar, and it's not setting people up to get great results. So at the end of the day, you have people like that are within my family and friends, they have these books in their homes, and they're wondering, they're saying paleo doesn't work, and you look at what they're following and these people that they're following. And it's a shame. It really is a shame, because it's wrecking the paleo name. And I'm sick and fed up. I'm completely fed up with people getting stalled or gaining weight on the paleo diet. It's completely unnecessary.
All right. Well, I'll do you a favor. I think I can announce it, because I've just been asked by Loren to actually become a contributing writer for his website. So one of the things I'll perhaps do is you can send me one of the books that you feel needs critiquing or looking at, but I will look at it from an unbiased perspective. Excellent. And I will say whether or not I think it's a paleo diet or not a paleo diet.
All right.
I like that. That is excellent, actually. That is something that me and Heath were thinking of doing ourselves, but it's such a huge task to take on with everything. And you know what? To be honest, you're the guy that needs to do it anyway. I mean, you're the expert. You and Loren started way back when. You're the pioneers, is the way I look at it. And those are the people, and I've made that argument, and I made that argument when I interviewed Loren, that if anyone's going to change the template, shouldn't it be the people who actually created the template and not some knucklehead 20 years later who decides they want to use the paleo name?
And when the template gets changed, like Loren's position on saturated fat changed when he actually dug a little deeper into the research and was like, you know what? I was wrong. And as a researcher, he's prepared to admit that he was wrong on that, and that he didn't look at the picture correctly at the time. He didn't look at it from an evolutionary perspective. And when he did, you know, he realized that the saturated fat consumption could be anywhere from sort of upwards to almost 17% saturated fat, but about an average of 13% fat. Now, when you then look at the American Heart Association guidelines of 7%, or the World Health Organization of 10%, I mean, let's focus on the American Heart Association. 7-13, that's almost half the saturated fat. What are you going to replace it with? Well, they told everyone to replace it with carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Vegetables.
Oh my gosh.
You know, that's exactly what happened. And that's where we've gone wrong. And that all came about because if you increase saturated fat in the diet, you will increase cholesterol. And that's true. But you increase the HDL cholesterol. So your actual risk of heart disease goes down up to a limit. Certainly you can go too far. You start getting in 20% and above saturated fat. I would not agree with that at all, because guess what? There's no evolutionary template that supports that either. Because that's not the natural. Again, it's back to nature.
That's the ketogenic.
That's the other thing you could say. You're just using natural ingredients to make your products. And if you use natural ingredients, it's going to get a thumbs up from me.
Yeah, and then they're all low. They're all very low sugar and very low carb. So, well, congratulations for writing on getting that appointment by Dr. Cordain. I believe he's going to be on next week, talking with us. So we're very excited to have him on the show. And I think you've shed light on a lot of the confusion that's going on out there. So we really want to thank you for being on the show and being a supporter of Julian Bakery. And just confirming what Gary and I already knew was true. I mean, you have such a great wealth of information, and your education, speaks for you. So, and you're the person that people should be getting advice from. And we definitely support you. And we want to make sure people go to your site. It's docsmith.org, right?
Yep.
And definitely stay up to date on all his stuff. He is a great person.
And then all of the writing, if I can interject, is going to be, you can get to it from that web address, but offthemark.org is going to be kind of, that'll be where I'll post everything if I've got a new piece that's going on the paleo diet with Loren's side, or if it's on my own blog. So a lot of that is in the works right now. But yeah, I look forward to picking up topics. I mean, one of the things I'm going to be definitely going after is the critique stuff out there on the Paleolithic diet. I think, that I did the one against Christina Warner, but there's plenty more out there that I think is affecting people's health. Ultimately that's what I have no need to have an allegiance, so like with your products, Heath, if I didn't like them, they wouldn't be going that good. My reputation is more important than anything. So I want to be able to defend anything I recommend to someone. So I'm quite happy. So if anyone wants to criticize any of your products, ask me why, what's the issue? If someone was if you were saying you should be eating my bread all day long and eating, 10 sandwiches with the thing, I'd be going, probably don't want you doing that, because it gets to your fat content would get a little high there. So, but in the right common sense proportions, your products are fantastic.
Yeah.
So, and again, your own, getting satiated will take care of the amount that you would eat, because, they aren't high sugar.
Right.
So when you haven't got the high sugar, you can't pack in those calories. It's going to satiate you and fill you up.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. For anybody that has questions for Gary and I, email Gary at theprimalshow.com and myself, Heath, at theprimalshow.com. Once again, check out offthemark.org, right?
Yep.
And thank you for being on the show. And we will definitely send you a whole box full of books.
And you won.
Okay, I'll send you one, and I know which one it is. So,
I think I know which one it is too.
You said there was one that's a bestseller, so let me look at that. And I'm not going to be rude. I'm just going to give an objective perspective on, what percentage of it is paleo and what isn't, and we'll look at it that way, and we'll write an article on that. Everything should be transparent, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep. Very good. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.